can't be just for CEOs and hedge fund managers. Democracy can't be just for billionaires and corporations. Prosperity and democracy are part of your basic bargain, too.
Hillary Clinton there pledging to close the income gap and rebalance the economy during her first major rally over the weekend in New York.
That is a great place to start our roundtable this hour. With us is President of Citizens for Self-Governance and Attorney Mark Meckler. Also rejoining us is Newsmax's Chief Washington Correspondent and White House columnist John Gizzi. Thank you both for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right, let's start with you, Mark. We heard Hillary Clinton first in New York, then in Iowa, talking about this image, this idea of, she came out in support of raising the minimum wage, but she herself is one of those 1%ers now. Does this tack to the left, is this really going to resonate with her considering her recent private sector success?
I think it will resonate with some of the base, though I have to say, because of Bernie Sanders far to her left, I mean, she's going to have trouble with the hardcore base on these issues. She's a multimillionaire. She's earned a lot of that money just here in the last 24 months. So it's extraordinary to hear her talk about income inequality. It's a woman, by the way, who hasn't driven a car in decades, probably hasn't bought groceries. She's really out of touch with the American people. So the populist message is going to be difficult for her to sell over the long haul.
John Gizzi, what are your thoughts on this? Did this help reboot the Hillary Clinton campaign?
Well, remember something. You have a different set of standards here in the Democratic Party from other Democratic races in modern history, as well as the Republican race this year. She is the runaway front runner so far. So the question of rebooting or restarting is not a major problem for her. Now, if we get ahead and see Bernie Sanders, let's say, or former Governor Martin O'Malley getting 30–40% in the early caucuses and primaries, then yes, some rebooting is going to be necessary, and some rewiring of her language might be in order, an emphasis, for example, on more populist themes or anti-business themes that resonate in the primary. For now, I think she's just where she always was, which is the odds-on favorite for nomination.
Yeah, I haven't personally seen them. I know there's some new polling information out that is showing Bernie Sanders doing better in these early primary and caucus states. When we hear Hillary Clinton talk about this populist pitch, it's a far different cry from what Bill Clinton was known for when he was president as being more of a moderate. But she's also mentioning Bill Clinton now and Barack Obama. So which Hillary is it going to be, Mark?
Well, I think there is no real Hillary. I think that's the fundamental truth. Hillary is a political animal. She plays to political expediency. She's always done so. This is a woman that touts herself as the primary fighter against the war on women, yet she was the primary fighter against the women who made legitimate accusations against her husband. So again, I think Hillary Clinton is a shadow. Hillary Clinton is whoever she thinks she needs to be to get elected.
Do you agree with that, John? Is she just playing party politics and pandering to whatever audience she needs at that time?
The late Mayor Marion Barry of Washington, D.C. used to say, "I'm a situationist. You see in me what you need to see in order to vote for me," and I think that applies to this candidate as well.
All right, so Marion Barry and Hillary Clinton, the comparison there from John Gizzi, we love it. All right, let's talk about a little bit more about the other speech, not the one at Roosevelt Island, but the one in Des Moines, Iowa over the weekend. Let's take a listen to a clip from that.
The president should listen to and work with his allies in Congress, starting with Nancy Pelosi, who have expressed their concerns about the impact that a weak agreement would have on our workers.
All right, so real quickly, guys, before we step aside, about a minute left to go. We hear Hillary Clinton say this, but it doesn't really say a lot how she feels on the current state of the deal. She was able to kind of deflect this to Congress. John, was that a smart play on her part?
I think so. My own feeling on this, having watched the vote very closely late Friday afternoon, is that all the king's horses and all the king's men can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Look, the president had spirited opposition after he went to Capitol Hill and said, and I quote, "A vote against this is a vote against me." The thing speaks for itself. Republicans were just not going to give him authority. Democrats were not going to defy organized labor. and AFL-CIO President Rich Trumka for this president, and the vote was 302 to 126 against the Trade Authorization Act.
Yeah, so this is a lame duck vote here for President Obama. If you vote for this, you're voting against me here. Clearly, Mark, President Obama is in lame duck territory right now.
Well, I think he is. I think the more interesting nuance here is that Hillary Clinton is saying a lot and saying nothing. She's not taking a position on TPA per se. She's telling President Obama to listen to people. That's not a position, and Sanders is doing a good job of attacking her on this. The question is, can he make it stick over the long haul? She is alienating a large part of her constituency by not taking a strong position against TPA.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. We'll have you back. Continue this discussion on the other side of the commercial break. John and Mark are sticking around.
And we want to welcome back to our roundtable President of Citizens for Self-Governance, Attorney Mark Meckler, and Newsmax's chief political columnist and White House correspondent, John Gizzi. All right, let's, you want to continue on with the conversation that we were talking about?
Well, let's follow up with John. John, you were talking about big labor here and their involvement in the issue. And of course, the New York Times pointed out over the weekend discussing how stiff labor had really tried to derail this issue as of late. According to the article, union members had actually been going back a long time, going back opposing TPP all the way back since 2013, calling legislators, writing letters, and producing digital ads against the deal. Also, some very strong campaign-style commercials on the air late last week. But considering how far back this big labor opposition went, should any of these Democratic candidates, should they have been surprised that like the AFL-CIO came after some of these members of Congress?
No, the AFL-CIO was very clear in its attention that they were taking names and numbers. Congressman Barra of California, a Democrat who announced his support of the trade measure, had war declared on him by the leaders of organized labor, and another member of Congress on the Democratic side who did. Forewarned was forearmed. Josh Earnest, the White House press secretary, told me and told my colleagues that the president would stand by any member of Congress who was attacked for his support of this trade measure. So I think the lines were clearly drawn.
All right, well, let's move on a little bit. Of course, today we're looking forward to a big announcement coming out of South Florida. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush going to jump in the presidential ring today. Although he has stumbled on his words a few times in the past months, critics are saying not to underestimate him. And one of the examples of this, or three of the examples we should say, the former Florida governor has already received backing from 3 key Cuban-American congressmen. How big of a blow, Mark, is this to the candidacy of Marco Rubio?
I think it's pretty significant. Obviously, both of those candidates have a strong Florida base. Florida is an important primary state, and the question is who's going to carry that state. When you have such a huge Cuban-American community there in Miami and in the rest of Florida, that's a big blow to Marco Rubio. I was actually surprised to see them all unite around Bush.
John, did you feel the same way? John Gizzi? Did we lose you?
I must have lost him.
Apparently we're having some technical problems, but yeah, I think a lot of people were kind of surprised about this. How big of a blow do you think this is going to be to Rubio? Mark?
Well, I mean, it's certainly, I think he's going to downplay how big of a blow it is. That's what candidates have to do, but it's pretty difficult coming from his own community, which would be his strongest core base of support. Obviously, being a Cuban-American, sharing that life story with many of these members of Congress, his inability to pull them into his camp, and also, obviously, his Senate campaign manager went to work for Bush in charge of Hispanic outreach, so he's struggling in his own community there. That's very difficult to overcome.
I think what this also says is it reminds us of who was the governor of the state and who was the former Speaker of the Florida House around the same time. Of course, Marco Rubio viewed for a long period of time as a mentee to Jeb Bush mentoring him along his time in the State House. And maybe some of those old alliances are going to show up here with the candidacy of Jeb Bush. Mark, what do you expect to hear different from Jeb today when he makes his announcement than the previous announcements we've heard from the other candidates already in the race?
You know, I think what Jeb is going to focus on is his strength, and his strength is his executive experience. He was a successful governor, a popular governor. I think what folks hope to hear is his record. one of the things that I think Bush has not done a great job of, or his camp has not done a great job of, is defining him by his record as governor of Florida. He's taken some what I would call litmus test positions on Common Core and immigration that have alienated the base. And so few of the base are looking back to his record as governor of Florida. He really needs to focus on that if he wants to make up ground with the base.
All right, we have reestablished our connection with John Gizzi. There you are. All right, we're talking about Jeb Bush. What do you expect to hear from him today?
Take two.
Go for it.
I do expect that he will illustrate and underscore why he is his own person, as he has said several times in the past, and not just the lineal heir to his father and brother. At the same time, just having followed Jeb Bush for a number of years, he'll talk about education, opportunity, why he differs from other Republicans on the issues of immigration and the Common Core immigration education program, and he'll talk about his own family, his children and grandchildren, and it wouldn't surprise me if he'll throw in a few words in Spanish. He's perfectly bilingual.
Yeah, I was almost surprised when you saw the new Jeb Bush campaign logo announced that there wasn't a Spanish version with the exclamation point upside down in front of the Jeb. We know we have the exclamation point after the name, but he is doing it. He's trying to reach out to these voters, and maybe we'll see one of those released here soon enough. But we do want to thank John Gizzi and Mark Meckler for being with us for a roundtable discussion. Guys, we'll get your take also when we finally do hear from Jeb. Probably hear a lot about what we heard in the same video, but
Right, I'm sure.
probably hear something about cutting taxes too. That was,
And conservative values.
yes.
Yes.
Well, Jeb Bush has a record as a tax cutter in the state of Florida.
He does.
If he's going to talk about his experience, he needs to talk about that. More to come right after this.